I built a social following of over 100,000 people and a six-figure business within 2 years, and then I walked away from it. We need to talk about why. If we haven't met, I'm Samantha. I'm an operations consultant and the founder of Exhale Operations, which helps small business owners build systems so that they can get back to the work that they actually enjoy. If this is your first time seeing me, this is a brand new channel, and I'm super excited to continue to teach and share. But in order to do that, and especially in order to get in front of you again, it would really help if you just hit like and or maybe subscribe down below. I know literally everybody says this and you tune it out, but as a new channel, it has never been more clear to me why it is so important. So with all that, I will leave it to you, and let's move on to the content of this video. Hello, my friends. I thought we'd do a little bit more of a casual situation today. I have created a few videos at this point, and if you've been following along, I'm so grateful as this channel is brand new and it takes a lot of time, turns out, to build YouTube videos. I felt like a personal story was kind of overdue so you could know how I got here, and also because I'm very aware that my personal story is a lot of people's dream scenario. I know there are a lot of small business owners and creators and young people who really want to build social followings online and build businesses online. And because I've done both of those things, I definitely have some lessons to share. So I have my little notes here because I didn't formally script this video or anything. So if you see me looking down, that is why. In order to explain how I got to the decision to walking away from the last business that I built, I feel like I have to take a little bit of a step back to just sort of tell you the high level of my career journey. So when I graduated from college, I wanted to be a wedding planner. I went to school at Yale University, and when I went, I thought I wanted to be a theater director. I had always loved theater. My family has a history in theater, and I very quickly got to Yale and was like, holy shit, people here are really good at theater. I have multiple friends from college that are actively performing on Broadway right now. Very incredibly talented people. And I realized that I did not quite have the grit to be able to stick with that career, and that ended up with me thinking about what's like theater but not exactly theater, and I landed on events. And so during my college years, my summers were spent interning with event planners and event designers, and I really loved that work. It was creative, it involved storytelling, but it was also very logistics driven, timelines and managing people and fitting all the pieces together. It really hit a lot of the same things that I had loved about my theater years. And then when I got out of college, I got first a freelance job and then an internship with truly a Devil Wears Prada Miranda Priestley style boss. And so I ended up having to quit because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be treated this way. And it led to my first major reckoning, a whole 6 months out of college graduation. And I ended up through a crazy series of events that would maybe be a whole other video. So if you're interested in this early career story, drop comments down below and I can do it more in depth. I ended up working at a social media agency, and that job was transformational for me because I was with the company a little over 3 years. And in the time that I was there, the company tripled in size. I ended up going from being a little social media manager to a strategist to joining the new business team to work with that CMO that I had had a close relationship with. I have so much gratitude, and he was one of the most amazing bosses I've ever had. And then I ended up becoming his chief of staff. And chief of staff was not a role that I knew what it was. In the professional context, I knew what a chief of staff was in West Wing because I freaking love the West Wing. Stepping into that role, I became a little bit of sort of an air traffic controller. It was, okay, we need to focus on this, we need to deprioritize this. I'll do that research for you, I'll negotiate that contract for you. And I love that work. It was right at the intersection of storytelling and the performance of pitching for new clients with operations and sort of the coordinating. You may notice a theme here, how we've got this intersection. We've got these two things that come more of a creative storytelling side and then more of systems operations side. So just keep that in your head, because it's going to keep coming up. The company had a point in their growth where they needed me to specialize. It's like, Samantha, I either need you to be all new business or all operations. We can't keep you in this sort of hybrid role. And that just wasn't interesting to me at that time in my life. I was also growing frustrated with the startup, quick growing company MO, where you'd talk about an initiative and then 3 months later it was deprioritized, very little structure, and things were changing very quickly. So I was like, no, I want a more corporate mature company because I want to see how things work when there's actual systems and structures and all that good stuff. And so I ended up taking a job at a marketing focused consulting firm. The job was to be chief of staff to their head of growth, like the person who was responsible for new business. So I was in a very similar role, just at a new company. The company was older, it was more mature, it was higher revenue. I was like, perfect, this is a great next step. And I quickly observed that just because a company is more mature or larger does not mean that it is better at follow through or more consistent with systems being in place. There were some things that were way better run and had structure and moved through things. And then there are others that weren't. And so that was a real wake up call for me. But the other thing that was a real wake up call for me was actually realizing that I had a better personality for the quick moving startup than I actually did for this like more mature corporate company, because I got really frustrated with how slow things move. So I thought what I needed was this more structured, mature company. I turned out to be wrong. And that's the sort of thing you can only learn from experience. By the time I started to think about I need to go find another job, then this thing called the pandemic hit, and my grandfather died, and there was just a lot going on, and so it was not time for me to leave. So I ended up staying there a while longer, and I overstayed when I should have, because I started to get frustrated. And it was around that time that I hired my first coach. I was primarily working with this coach on sort of confidence and dating and all that good stuff, and it spiraled into having a reckoning with my career. And I ended up being asked by my coach, is there somebody in your life whose job you wish you could steal, or you wish you could just drop into their life and have their job? And I was like, yeah, you. And then she sort of chuckled and she goes, I know you've been thinking that for a while, and it just took you a while to say it out loud. How long has that been in your head? And she was so right. It had been in my head for like 3 weeks, and I just hadn't had the courage to say it out loud. And so very quickly, I made some choices. This goes back to, clearly I have more of a personality for the startup entrepreneurial vibe. I put in my notice. I started building a website. I decided I was going to launch a coaching business. And there was a very interesting decision point here, because I remember evaluating what type of coaching business do I want to start. I was getting so much meaning out of the coaching that I was receiving in this sort of dating, confidence, relationship place. But then I had always been the person for my friends that was like, oh, here's how I negotiated this job. Here's how I think about investing. Oh, I'm playing around with this niche automation tool. And I had this moment where I was like, which one of these do I want to do? Notice that parallel again. The systems, operations, I guess I used this hand to describe that one, but you get what I mean. And then the dating relational piece being made way more in that sort of storytelling side. So here we were again. I knew how important dating and relationships and confidence were to people. And in my head, I was like, that's so urgent. I bet people are more willing to pay for that. This side felt very practical. It seemed like something that a lot of people could figure out on their own. So I chose the dating coaching option, and I launched a business that was dating coaching for high achieving women. And I went headfirst into building my first business on my own, and incredible learning curve, so intense. But within about 6 months, I had built a social following of 50,000 people, which was wild. And I was making money from this business. And within about a year and a half, I had made 6 figures in that business, and my social following was over 100,000 people. Now, there's lots more details in the specifics of that journey. And again, if you want to deep dive into that one, drop a comment down below and I can go in more depth. But I very quickly, probably by the 1 year mark, really was starting to struggle with the actual coaching piece. And when I look back, let's be clear, I don't have any regrets about any of this. It's all a learning experience. But I started feeling like a little bit of a mismatch with the work that I was doing. I loved the running of the business, but actually the holding space for clients' emotions, the working through these things, I started to struggle with that. And at first I thought it was a business model. I was like, maybe I should be doing courses in digital products and not coaching. So I started evolving that way. And then I started to question, maybe this is so tied to me. I was having to share so much about my journey and my personal life in order to sort of explain the work that I did and the way it can impact your life. And so that involved sharing about my personal life and my traumas and whatever on the internet, which is scary. And I was like, well, maybe it's the fact that I am the brand and I'm not able to separate from my work as much. And so that led to, we're now like 3 years into the business, that led me to rebrand into Eldest Co, which had become the de facto positioning. I worked with a ton of eldest daughters. I am an eldest daughter. And so I rebranded, and that was actually a really cool process. I really enjoyed that. I worked with this amazing brand designer who I love, Sarah Ann Design. I'll link her down below, because if you need a brand designer, highly recommend, and tell her I sent you. It just didn't fix it. It didn't fix it. And so we were coming into the end of my 3rd year, starting into the 4th year of business, and things just didn't feel right. I had been, at this point, 3 years of something's not right. Something isn't the model. Is it the positioning? Is it my brand? What is it here? And I eventually came to terms with the fact that I loved running a business. I just didn't love running that business. And I made the decision at the end of 2025 to shut down my coaching business, formerly known as Eldest Co, at the time known as Eldest Co. And as soon as I really said it out loud and sent it in an email, I felt enormous relief. And that was a really good indicator to me that I had made the right call. that kicked off a period of reflection. There were clearly parts about running a business that I loved. I love working for myself. I love the behind the scenes of which system to use, whatever. And I kept coming back as I reflected to there's this intersection that has always existed in my life of these two types of things. And I call them, I had by this point clarified, I call them systems and stories. I love working at the intersection of systems and stories. But if you really had to make me choose, like my boss way back in the day had asked me to when I was back at the social media agency, for the last 7 years, I had chosen stories. I had chosen being in the new business side. I had chosen the personal relational piece. And when I got really honest, I think the right decision is for me to choose systems. Now, I don't want to be 100% systems. I still like there to be some element of stories in how I spend my day to day. But ultimately, I think I'm actually a systems person. And once I sort of was like, what would be true if I accepted that fact? The idea for the business I'm running now, Exhale, just appeared. And it seemed so obvious and so not easy, but like just clear. And I was like, I could help these types of people and I could offer these types of services and these are the types of things I'd be day to day. And that sounds super interesting. And I think part of that is also because it's my second business. I've done some things before. And so a lot of the fundamentals of setting up the business and getting it started just came more naturally to me. So that brings me to some of the takeaways that I had from this whole journey, from starting a business, building it to $100,000 plus in revenue and a huge social following, and why I was comfortable walking away from that business and sort of what I'm doing differently in this new journey of my life. So this is definitely where I have to reference my notes, so bear with me here. The first thing that I learned, I knew the answer way sooner than I acted on it. I've definitely seen that in past situationships and friendships too, where you deep down knew that something wasn't right and that you needed to find an exit way sooner than I was actually willing to do that. And I needed to go through the steps to make sure that I had really given it a fair shot before I was ready to walk away. But I also have sort of taken that nugget down into my chest of that feeling that you were like, is this just a doubt or is this the truth? It was the truth, and I didn't give it credit for that at the time. So I'm definitely continuing to metabolize that for future experiences. I knew more than I gave myself credit for at the time. The next observation that I've learned that I would really advise anybody thinking about, especially starting your own business, but honestly, this could be career direction in general, is to chase the thing that feels easy to you. When I look back, I've always been that nerd that was playing around with Zapier automations in my free time, and I built a personal CRM long before that was a term that anybody used. I was 23, 24, something like that. But I undervalued the thing that I was so good at because it came easily to me. And I think that's so much more common than we think, where it feels easy to us. It feels second nature to us. And so we think it's easy to others. And realizing that often the thing that comes so naturally to us is actually so valuable to other people because it doesn't come naturally to them. Because I definitely didn't see a lot of my sort of organizational systems building skills, even though in my professional work, in my chief of staff roles, I was being consistently reinforced that my ability to organize, see the playing field, prioritize is so valuable, just like X's and O's. I was really good at. It still didn't quite click into place. And so now that's something that I'm way more aware of just because something feels easy to me doesn't mean it's not valuable. Another takeaway is that sometimes slower growth is the right choice. When I built my coaching business, I needed money then. I was depleting savings rapidly. So I prioritized what will get me revenue in the door fastest. And so that's part of why I chose TikTok as my primary marketing tool, because I had seen the follower growth that could happen rapidly. I made a lot of decisions with that business in order to grow as quickly as I could. And I think for some people, this is the right decision for them. You see this in the difference between somebody bootstrapping and somebody getting VC funding. VC funding, you can scale a lot faster because you have the cash to just throw at the problem. Versus if you bootstrap, you have to solve problems chronologically. And it might mean that you get to revenue slower or you aren't able to take on as many clients as quickly. And a lot of people like to say, and I feel like a lot of sort of popularized advice out there encourages you to do the things that it takes to scale as quickly as possible. AI is only expediting this. Oh, well, now you can do XYZ with AI, and so you can get to XYZ threshold sooner. Cool. But I think what I learned from my first experience, and that I'm certainly taking away to growing this second business, is that it's okay to choose something that is right for you, even if it means that you grow a little slower. You have to be aware of the trade-off that you're making there. I talked about that in a previous video. For some people, making the trade-off of this is going to grow slower, but it's something I can sustain over time, or it's something that fits my personality type. If that means you can be consistent and you can stick with it longer, it's probably a better decision, and you just have to manage your own discomfort with the fact that the growth is maybe slower. So with this business, I've chose to prioritize YouTube as my primary marketing platform. And I know that growth is going to be slower here probably than my growth on TikTok was, but it feels more sustainable to me over the long term, just based on the frequency of creation. And I'm clearly a gabber, and so long form is like a better medium for me. And I'm okay with that trade. I had to think about it, but I'm okay with that trade. And that's definitely a lesson that I think about with what services I'm offering, how I'm structuring things with clients, is like, where might growing slower or making less money be trades that you're willing to make for something being sustainable or healthy for you long term. My next takeaway is that most people have no recognition or understanding. It's kind of impossible to understand unless you've been in it, of the reality of being visible on social media. It is so much more intense than you realize. And it's why anybody who has ever had any sort of real social media visibility repeatedly, not just like one viral video, but it's happened a couple of times. I had one video go to over 1 million and one video go to 5.2. And honestly, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It exposes you to some of the scariest, saddest parts of the internet. And I would highly not recommend it. I actually don't want to get to that level of viral. There's a medium viral that I'm totally good there. We don't need to get up into the millions mark. I think there are a lot of people that are incredibly rude on the internet, period. But I think a lot of people like to say, oh, it must be nice, about celebrities and big influencers and even business owners who have built incredible followings on social media. And they like to say things like, oh, well, they signed up for it. And until you have been in that position, you're exposing yourself by saying that, oh, it must be nice. Because once you have been in that position, you would know that it is not nice at all. I think it's something that once you are in it, most people kind of wish they could put the genie back in the box. On the virality public persona part, I think not enough people are thinking clearly about the costs. There's some statistic that one of the most popular careers that Gen Z want is to be an influencer. And I'm like, girl or boy or non-binary person, think through that really hard. Because even in my small little version, building a business that was built on me sharing things about their personal life is not something I'm willing to do again. And it's actually a very active boundary I am setting with this new business. Is like, this is a business that I can build without sharing enormous amounts of my personal life. And for my mental health, my relationships with people in my life, just my ability to not need to pull out my phone while I'm at dinner with girlfriends because I need to shoot a reel for something, is very important for quality of life. And I will be interested in 10 to 20 years when they've done the mental health studies of what that sort of public visibility does to your brain, because our brains are not meant to process that amount of visibility and criticism and the completely uncouth things that people feel comfortable saying from behind their user 9278ZB account. I would think very carefully about whether or not you really want that level of visibility. I made a very active decision with Exhale to make a brand that is separate from my name, and that's what I did when I rebranded Eldest Co to Eldest Co. But that's a very active choice and something I would recommend to people. You gotta go through pros and cons, and I did a lot of research on the benefits of that. And this channel has my name associated with it in terms of the handle. That's for some strategic reasons, and if you're interested in why of that, drop that in the comments below and I can dive in deeper. My final sort of observations, takeaways here. Would I start a business again in the way that I did? No, clearly, because I started a different business and I'm doing it very differently. And these are the core ways that I would do it differently. I've already talked about way clearer personal life boundaries. I think it is really important for us to be clear with ourselves, what is work, your business, whatever, and what is our personal life, so that you have the ability to turn off your brain, especially in the relation to not needing to constantly be aware. There's a weird third person view you develop of yourself when you capture your life on social media of, should I be filming this? What would the shot look like here? Is this a video concept? For my mental health, that was not something that I was willing to do. And so thinking about, is your business such that there are clearer lines about when you're in which zone? And then the thing that I definitely did differently this time was I started a brand that was not me. So I'm not building the Samantha Pillsbury personal brand. I'm building Exhale Operations, and my personal brand is related to that, but it is not the primary thing that I'm building. Second thing that I do differently is making sure that I picked a business model that was aligned with my personality and my rhythms. So business model, are you a product business, a business? Are you a service-based business? Are you doing one-to-one coaching? Are you doing digital product sales? People need to think, because there's the right decision in terms of what can scale quickly and what gets you money faster, but I think you gotta be really honest with yourself, and this may be one of those times that you choose the slower growth option over the faster growth option because it's more sustainable for you. And so that's definitely something to think about. The next thing is when you're committing to doing something one-on-one or a service that you're going to repeat, or even, I guess if it were a product business, something that you are continually obsessed with, is to pay attention to something that you have been repeatedly drawn to more than just in this phase. Because if I really thought about it, I had never wanted to be a therapist or a columnist offering dating advice. When I chose dating coaching, it was so personally relevant to me at that moment, but I did not have a repeated pattern of this is something that I would want to talk about forever. Whereas the other category, I did. I had a repeated pattern of liking coming back to that topic, which I wish I had listened to a little bit more and definitely informed my decision in starting Exhale. And the final thing that I would/am doing differently is building your content strategy, also thinking about alignment with you. So this is also in that same theme of it might be the best choice to build something slower if it's more sustainable for you long term. And that just requires your own mental management of, oh, I wish I was here. I want to be to this goal faster. If I get there faster and then I end up with the sort of golden handcuffs of this huge social following on a platform that you don't want to keep building, been there. Sometimes you need to think about what's the format that feels best for you. These are questions that I actually would love to have conversations with more of my clients about. So if you're considering being an Exhale client, let's flag that in our discovery call to really think about making sure that you've built your content systems or even just your lead gen systems generally in a way that aligns with what you can sustainably continue. So that is it. If any of this was helpful to you, I would really love if you would like or subscribe down below, and let me know if these more personal winding thought story times are interesting to you, and maybe I'll add them into the rotation. With that, I'll see you in the next one.